We conclude today the 9th letter. Yesterday was very profound, heavy, and bringing out the concept of tzedakah, charity. That, yes, charity begins at home, because that's what our obligation is prioritized. Actually, today's Chumash that we learned in the Torah portion. So yes, there is prioritizing, but that's because the law tells us. But the concept of charity is that the Torah is telling us that a Jew has a responsibility for every Jew at prioritizing. And by the way, that responsibility goes beyond just Jews, but for everybody. But the sense is that in my piece of bread is your sustenance. And what I have is not meant for me. In other words, human nature is, I want to provide for that which is important, and that is an extension of me, which is my wife and children. But what we learned is that it needs to be providing for the entire community. That is not out of just of a responsibility, a much deeper idea than a responsibility. Self-love will be, I give to that which is an extension of myself. Again, my wife and kids. But the uniqueness of the Jewish people is the oneness of God, and therefore we should give as God gives. How does God give? Gratuitously gives us life. He gives us what we need. So likewise, we have to do that to others. And it's not out of a sense of responsibility, not out of a sense of duty, out of a sense of, that's what out of kindness. God dispenses kindness that animates all created beings. He doesn't just, those that are closer to me, I'll take care of them. Those who are a little not as important to me, I won't take care of them. No. He takes care of all. So likewise, we have that if we say the word responsibility, because it's just, it's easy, but the responsibility comes out of a sense of true kindness of giving. It's not about me. I was given this money, so I should give it. I wasn't given this money, so I should have it. Right? Have it for my needs, my pleasure, and so on. That was just to give another angle on what we learned yesterday. Very powerful. So, continues the Alter Rebbe. And he says, therefore, my beloved ones, my brethren, direct your hearts to the words that I've expressed briefly, and face to face, I will speak at length about it. Spoke briefly, but I'll speak at length about it because it's a very important topic. Now, what? That we are now at the times of the footsteps of Mashiach. We're in the threshold of the world order being changed to Mashiach. And the principal service of God is the service of tzedakah, of charity. As our sages say, that we will only be redeemed through charity, through tzedakah. Even though the sages did say that the study of Torah is equivalent to the performance of equivalent to all of the performance of acts of loving kindness. So it sounds like Torah is more important than acts of charity. He said that was in their days. In their days, the most important principal way to serve God was through the study of Torah. And therefore you have the great scholars of the men of the Mishnah, the Tanoim, and the men of the Gemara, the Amoraim. That was back in the day. However, as we approach the footsteps of Mashiach, they're very close. And as it says, Sukkah David Hanefeles, the sukkah of David has fallen to the feet, meaning to the world of action. In other words, that's a metaphor for understanding the presence of God. The Shekhinah, divine presence of God, has fallen. Fallen where? Column to the foot, to the heels. Heels is where we take action, right? Where you take your step forward. It's with your heel. So, to the world of action is fallen. So the response to the fallen of godliness, of the holy temple that had the Shekhinah, the divine presence of God, is by connecting to that Shekhinah and where it is in the world of action, and transforming that darkness into light. Transforming the heel, that is callous, right, low, and transforming that darkness of the world into light. So what would be the corresponding proper thing for that? Not your intellect, not, speech itself alone, which would be Torah study, your intellect and speech, but the act of action. Take action, which is tzedakah, charity. So there are a lot of those action-oriented mitzvahs. Tefillin is an act. Lighting Shabbos candles is an act. So why specifically charity? Among all of the commandments that involve action, is because this kind of action is, again, bringing out the lowness, right? Intellect is a higher world. Action is a lower world within us, right? Not lower in the value, as we see here, but to engage in action is much more simple, lower power of being than to use your intellect or your speech to communicate. A child can do actions, but they're a year old, they can't communicate. So, what kind of action? Well, what does God do in the world of action? He takes action by giving to those who don't have. And who doesn't have, by the way? Every one of us. I don't have, and I'm not an energizing bunny that I have my own, vital force on my back that I carry. And therefore I create myself. I'm nothing. God has to create me into something. So we have nothing. And that's just an existence together with everything that I got, whatever it is only coming from Him. Because God's constantly providing to us. Who? We have nothing of our own. That's what He's doing. So that's what we have to cleave to. We have to cleave to that and follow that. That we have to sacrifice our impulse. Meaning that we want to hold on to what's mine. I want it for me. Okay, my wife, my children. I want to give to them. No, open your hand, open up your heart. Don't let the negative side control you, but you subjugate it. Convert that darkness that we have in us into light. And God will bless. And being that, or on the footsteps, on the heels of Mashiach, that through this we will merit to behold the eye to eye God returning to Zion. At that time will be the physical eye, not just the mind's eye, But the physical eye will behold godliness in the physical world. How will we be able to do that? Because we give charity in the physical world and change the physical reality of giving to those that don't have. And therefore, that will give us the merit to be able to see with our physical eye the presence of God when Mashiach comes. And that far surpasses anything that the mind eye can accomplish through study of Torah. Very powerful. Very powerful indeed. Questions, comments? Oh, my dear sister is joining us. Liara in Israel, thank you for joining. A shout out to my sister and a big mazel tov. Okay, Jay has a lot of different questions that are not so related to what we're doing over here, talking about over here. So I'm going to wait for that. Okay. It's not right now for the class. Good questions, but not for the moment. Okay, Rachel from South Carolina has some questions. Is it the lowest generation comes so that the light can come, a constriction of light like in creation in order to the divine light to be revealed? So, in a sense, we're the lowest generation. We're the heels. But you know what? When you want to go into a hot tub, put your heel in first. You don't put your head in first. You know, sacrifice will come from the heel, not from the head. The head won't sacrifice. The head will only do that which is worthy to be done, that which makes sense to do, that which is good to do, that which is beneficial to do. Here we're talking about sacrifice, giving in such a way. The impulse is not to give. Hold on to what you got and to give that. So that, in a sense, our lowness allows us to reach the highest, right? The callousness of the heel, right? That we're not spiritually attuned to like previous generations. Because of that, we can go into a fire and transform the darkness into light. That's what we can do. How? As we explained. So is the heel meeting the head like the heel and the head bruising of the seed? Meeting the head like the heel and the head bruising the seed. If the woman, I'm not clear what that means, Rachel. Could the heel, lowest part of our generation, lead us to the renowned creation of heaven and earth, the original time of creation, beyond it? Yes. So, Bella, what I'm saying is, study of Torah takes intellect and takes speech, right? That's a much more sublime power that the human being has, right? Using your intellect, using your speech. Action is less sublime, to be able to move something, that takes an action. The power to do that is a much lesser power of the soul than to use your intellect or your speech. So in that sense, it's lesser. It doesn't mean less valuable. It's a lesser power of the person. It's a lower power, we call it, right? So it's a lower power. And so it means it's touching a lower place, just like the heel touches a lower place. And what that means, it can pick up from a lower place at the same time, something that would not be able to be picked up, right? You can't pick up with your intellect so easily, with your speech. I mean, you could pick up the spirit of the person, but you can't pick up something materially. But materially you can pick up when you bend and you go down. That's an action of picking something from the lower place and picking it up. So pick up a person who's in a low place, who doesn't have, just like God does. He picks us up. We have nothing. It's all His. It's all given from Him. And He does that gratuitously. So we need to do that, to give to those who don't have. Right? Those who don't have doesn't mean just, people that don't have, but as those who are dependent on, that they should get from others. So that action is picking up from the lowest part in the world of action and lifting up. And that will bring what is also fallen to the lowest place. Exile is the lowest place, the divine presence of Hashem. And through our act of giving, we will redeem. We will be redeemed. The Shekhinah will redeem. The Jewish people will be redeemed. And through that, all of the nations of the world will be redeemed as a result. And this is what. So when we act this way, not holding on to what's mine, but opening up your hand and giving freely, right? That action will allow us that our physical eye will merit to be able to see the presence of God in times of Mashiach. Because that's what we're creating, a reality in the physical world. That just like you could see how you lifted up someone who was down and out, so likewise, we will be able to see how we're being lifted up by God with our physical eye, not just with our mind's eye. Right now, with our mind's eye, we understand the concept of Mashiach because we learn it in Tanya. Then we will see it in the physical eye as a merit for what we have done. Denise, I feel the coming Mashiach now. When Mashiach comes, will we know right away or will be unveiled slowly? Good question. Don't have an answer to that. Could be both. Either one. Or both. So, don't know for sure. Kimbella, I answered. A greater darkness light shines brighter if it is connected to the direct source. Yes. Could this be the sign for Mashiach? Yes. All right, folks. Amazing. You're all amazing. Okay. You have to excuse me. We have Rambam, and it's a bit of a hectic day. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day and a great Shabbos. Thank you all for joining.